Welcome to Marth and the Machines, number 20, which is also, as announced, the first of a new series on Marth and the Machines. Rules tolerating frequent misapplication, where I will cover some of the more easily misunderstood sections of the rulebook. The idea is to be helpful for all those that have difficulties dealing with them. To do so, I will use my Photoshop foo and graphics from the Warmachine engine on Vessel, as well as live footage material from actual combat when it presents itself. I hope to cover all of the issues surrounding a given topic in a well-chosen order. Today's topic is one of the most, if not the most, extensively discussed, ruled and argued about at the actual game table. A topic which can end friendships if all those involved lack a certain amount of decency. It's the nightmare of tabletops and creeps onto the terrain builders like a lingering darkness. It has a name, and it is Line of Sight. GW took this even a step further, introducing true line of sight to 40k. Very scary. But before we go into any details, let's first clarify why line of sight is necessary to be dealt with. There are two main reasons. First, you can't see everything. Easy, huh? Jokingly said, the main difference between China and the moon is that while you can have a clear line of sight to the moon, you won't be able to see China, unless you're Chinese. But let's stick to the tabletop. We all agree that you should not be able to see the backside of a house when standing at the front, right? Second, guns. If I can see it, I can shoot it is the canon of the true line of sight. Of course, the other one does not want to be shot. So we have a potential conflict at hand, which must be resolved by an impartial entity everyone accepts when choosing the game. Enter the rules. In Warmachine and Hordes, line of sight takes up 3 pages in the rulebook on its own, and 2 of those are examples with pretty pictures. We'll go over the basics first, then cover what that means on the table, and then work out the differences between and nuances of tall in the saddle, ranked attack, coordinated strike, intervening terrain, and similar stuff. Okay, so Privateer Press introduced the model volume with Mark II. Those familiar with basketball might see similarities, because every model is considered to inhabit a cylinder of set size depending on its base size, regardless of the actual height of the model. So since there are small, medium and large bases, there are also small, medium and large cylinders. I'll omit the actual numbers here. What this means is that, for example, Reinhold and Epic Iris are, rules and line of sight wise, the same size. As strange as that may seem, it does prevent models converted with exaggerated bases to see more than they should. Now, to determine whether one model has line of sight to another, first of all you draw a line between any part of the first model's volume to any part of the second model's volume that's in the first model's front arc. Makes sense. You don't have eyes in the back of your head, right? Unless you're Lilith or a Legion of Blight, Everblight Dragonspawn. The next 3 steps determine the don'ts. No passing over terrain, the bases of models with size equal to or larger than the target model, and no passing of line of sight blocking effects. The first one's a little grey zone, but so far never caused any issues. We're not talking about rough terrain or forests here, but about obstructions. The last one is a no-brainer. The most interesting interactions happen in regard to the second. What does it mean in the actual table that the line mustn't pass over the base of an intervening model that has a base size equal to or larger than the target model? Butcher, Darius, Resnick players all know your little guys won't screen you from enemy fire like sieges. But then again, bad example, nothing can hide you from siege. To screen a medium based model you need other medium or large bases. It also works for you as well. The rule means you get to ignore everything smaller than your target, friend or foe, no matter if you are shooting it or poking it with a reach weapon. So depending on your choice of targets, this rule gives your model something like a ranked attack light. It only bones you when attacking small targets, but in that case, let's be clear, most large targets will be heavy warjacks. And heavy warjacks can trample, which means no problem. Let's go with an example for better explanation. Here, these pikemen waltzed into attack. They didn't charge, that would have affected their facing and caused severe Photoshop headaches for me at this point, so forgive me. The front row could attack many targets, the whole front row of the Sword Knights as well as the Centurion, because his base is bigger than all intervening models. They could not attack the right-hand triad because that one is either not within the pikeman's front arc or out of range. They could also not attack the officer because his base is the same size as the Sword Knights in front of him. The second row of the pikemen could not attack the front row of the Sword Knights because their own comrades would be in the way. They could attack the Centurion due to its large base, but it should be out of reach. Which is good for the Centurion, because even with its reach weapon it could only attack this single pikeman to whom it can draw an uninhibited line of sight. To expand upon this example, here's an additional unit of Widowmakers and some enemy jacks. Usually you'd never place them like this, but here they still have targets. While they could only shoot some of the Sword Knights and would suffer the in-melee penalty except for the right-hand triad, they could all fire at all the jacks in spite of the ongoing melee and themselves due to line of sight rules. Fire away, boys! Now let's tackle some special issues which deal or modify line of sight. First up, Tall in the Saddle. Where does it actually kick in? As we can see here, Gravus can attack the Spriggan over the heads of the Exemplar, but that is not due to Tall in the Saddle, but normal line of sight, because the Jack's base is bigger than the Exemplars. Who knew? The Spriggan, should he survive the onslaught, could attack the first rank of Exemplars pestering him, or go right for Gravus with his lance. Ironically, should he unhorse him, Gravus would then be safe from following attacks because his base then is small. I'll just skip the possibility of trample shenanigans here. Mind you, however, this only applies when the Exemplar are in base to base. If they leave a gap, anyone can attack through that gap, and possibly attack back through that gap. Gravus would not be safe then. Here's a more significant example. What Tall in the Saddle allows you to do is to ignore models with smaller bases than your own in melee. You can pick on small guys behind small guys or medium guys, and on medium guys behind medium guys depending on whether you're light or real cavalry. Kovnik Markov profits a lot from that because he does not have to drop his warhead on the front row, but can place it in the back rows to maximize the damage and pick on officers that shun the front line. Kaboom! I can already hear the naysayers. You'd never bunch up like this. While there actually is little reason to cluster like this except for that liability they call shield wall, I'd be very careful with words like never. And if they spread, "Hey, cavalry charge, yeehaw!" Cavalry will get their own issue, at least because everyone in our group is still having issues with it. Then what does ranked attack do? Ranked attacks means that your guys get to ignore the unit for line of sight when shooting and in melee. Specifically, as we already discovered, the small-based ones. Here the Stormguard does not block line of sight to the enemy troopers for the gun mages, giving them plenty of targets to choose from, while blocking line of sight to the gun mages themselves. It bears worth noting that troopers with ranked attack already in melee would still elicit the in melee penalty. Admittedly, the Winter Guard in this example is as good as boned. If points had to be on par, they'd bring Joe and their UA and simply spray everyone off the board. What's the special thing about Coordinated Strike? Coordinated Strike works in a way the other way round. It does not let a model unit be ignored by others, but it lets it ignore others. So in a way, it makes models of a certain type have ranked attack for the model with the Coordinated Strike. As you might be able to figure, the main benefit is when attacking small-based models. And as far as I know, this ability is only found on the Dawnguard Skyer as of Mark II. And what exactly is intervening terrain? It's a circumstance often forgotten. It means that if, for an attacking model, not all of the target's model's volume is visible, that model gets a bonus to defense. Again, only walls and obstructions will probably ever cause this when some models are cowering behind a corner and you're out of movement to cross the corner completely. So I hope that was enlightening for you. I intend to keep tabs on the topic, so I might do an advanced version once, or another one with more examples or so, or even update and revise this one in order to provide useful and correct data. And until next time, farewell.